Welcome to Formula One and Son. I'm Tom.
And I'm Oscar.
Hi, guys.
And that's Ruby. Today we have a special guest, Formula One and son and daughter. Ruby is my youngest child and only daughter, and she's joining us today.
And just for clarification, I'm the only son. So there's
the
only two
only
siblings.
son.
You don't get any more siblings after this.
And we're recording this very late after the British Grand Prix, but well over a week later, because we were all travelling overseas.
We were on vacation.
We were on vacation. So, and this is a great race for Ruby to join us because, of course, Silverstone was a cracker. It was a fantastic race. It's
Best
taken us a
race
little
of
while.
the season confirmed.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I went on and on and on about Bahrain, and now I'm probably going to go on and on about Silverstone.
Yeah.
And we saw just some awesome battling. So we'll cover all of the highlights. Ruby, did you want to give us your impressions to start with? Of what did you think about the race?
Well, I think it was pretty good for Daniel Ricciardo, and I enjoyed that. I think Hamilton also had a pretty good race.
Winning is definitely a good race.
Yes.
Definitely.
I thought Bottas was going to win, actually. I don't know why. I
He
really thought
would
he was going to
have.
win.
But
Well, you're on the right track
Mercedes
there.
made a huge mistake there.
Yeah,
but
well,
let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, let's start from the beginning. This weekend, it was. You know what I really enjoyed about this weekend, guys? Actually, was we didn't know who was going to win qualifying. It wasn't obvious that Mercedes were the fastest. We had Ferrari topped one of the practice sessions.
Yeah.
Mercedes topped one of the practice
Gasly
sessions.
somehow topped one of the practice sessions.
Gasly topped a practice session. But what we did see was in qualifying, of course, Mercedes did get that front row lockout with Bottas once again pipping Hamilton. Back on form this weekend,
Yeah.
you might say. Not that he's been off form.
Somewhat Bottas 2.0. It's like Bottas 1.5.
Yeah, but we saw that, and then it was kind of the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, the Red Bulls, and then Vettel. And Vettel probably the disappointment on the weekend in
he had
many
a
ways. and
bad
we'll get to that.
weekend.
Yeah, he's a real talking point. I think Vettel's kind of had a bit of a low point in his career, but we'll get to that. But what I really like to see was the front four in qualifying were all within kind of 0.2 of each other. And I don't think we've seen a quali that close for a little
Yeah,
while.
and the front three were all within like 0.8, like 8 hundredths, I think.
Yeah, it was tight. So pretty run of the mill qualifying, except Vettel kind of stuffed it, and actually Gasly out qualified Vettel.
somehow.
Ricardo had a great quali P7. We saw that Lando had a good one. Actually, Sainz had a bad quali.
Yeah, Sainz
unusually.
had a terrible.
Yeah, he didn't even get out
He
of
finished
Q2.
13th.
Yeah,
Hulkenberg and Albon both had okay qualifyings, 9th and 10th.
Yeah, they were okay again, and we're kind of seeing this kind of age-old story, which is the McLarens looking quick. Renault actually back on form this weekend after a pretty horrible weekend in Austria.
Yeah.
But then, and the Toro Rosso's looking okay, at least in the hands of Alexander Albon. Kvyat had a shocker in qualifying.
Just
Was
not
he
the
down in
circuit for him
17th or
probably
something?
because he's been okay otherwise. Yeah, 17th.
Yeah, so pretty interesting quali session, but kind of as you were.
And then Giovinazzi and Raikkonen, the two alphas, pretty solid, 11th and 12th.
Gio outqualified Raikkonen again, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so he's doing well, although, of course, he shamed himself in the race. And, in fact, he was the man that really changed the shape of the whole race.
Yeah,
and the certain Lewis Hamilton could probably thank Giovinazzi
The race
for
would have
winning the race.
been not that touch as exciting as it was if it weren't for him.
Yeah, maybe. It was very exciting before the safety car, but we'll get to that.
And then we have Sainz at 13th, who we said. Grosjean at 14th, another horrible weekend for the Haas as well.
Yeah.
Gunther Steiner.
Oh, yeah.
Poor Gunther
The Haas
Steiner.
had a shocker weekend, but we'll get to that.
And then Racing Points also with a terrible weekend, even worse than the Haas. We have Perez in 15th, Magnussen, as we just mentioned, in 16th, and then we said Kvyat had a terrible weekend. Oh, not weekend. He had an okay race. He improved a little bit, but terrible qualifying. And then Stroll in 18th.
Well, Stroll never qualifies well. He remains...
Yeah.
I think this is his run of like 20 Grand Prix or something.
And then
not
do I
getting out
really
of
have
Q1.
to say who's lost? Propping up the stands.
Well, I'm going to guess it was Kubica right at the back, and that Russell outqualified him by about half a
How
second.
did you
Am I
know?
correct? And once again, Russell doing a great job. And we'll get to them. I think they probably had their best race
Definitely.
of the season with the finishing positions,
Yeah.
but we'll get to that. So then the race started. Ruby, what did you think about the beginning of the race? Did you see anything exciting happen?
Well, yeah, it was a pretty exciting beginning. Lots of passes. Yeah,
Not enough crashes, though.
I mean, not really crashed, but Grosjean and Magnussen at the start.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like, not a big crash, but kind of like contact, I guess.
That's right.
They
and
got too much damage. They did.
Well, they both got punctures.
Yeah, that's really unlucky, though.
Yeah, but their wheels clashed and they both got rear punctures, and that caused them both to pit. So they were at the end. And I think we pretty quickly saw Magnussen retire after that. So he must have had some more severe damage. And yeah, once again, there's probably enough said about the Hasses. They're terrible weekend yet again.
Grosjean also
and they're all at sea. They didn't have pace anyway. And yeah, that was a bit of a shocker. Really, the start of the race to me was characterized by this amazing Hamilton Bottas battle. Bottas P1, of course, in quali, and then got away from Hamilton. Okay, I think Hamilton got a little bit of wheel spin.
He did, yes.
Yeah, so Bottas gets away nicely, but Hamilton is immediately all over the back of them, and we just saw this great wheel-to-wheel racing.
A little bit of wheel-to-wheel racing. It was good. It was good racing, but then it kind of stops, and they just kind of go ahead. And then we have the next battle evolving, which was Gasly, Leclerc, Verstappen. Oh, no. Verstappen, Leclerc, Gasly, Vettel.
Yeah.
Or more or less Verstappen, Leclerc. Had a huge battle.
Yeah, Verstappen and Leclerc battled almost the whole race until some of the pit stop
never
sessions.
Never got past Leclerc. He just couldn't do it.
Yeah, did he not get past him to crash into the back of Vettel later on in the race? I mean, the other way around. So Verstappen got past both Ferraris eventually, right? Because that's how Vettel crashed into him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what were you going to say, Ruby?
So, I think, Verstappen passed Leclerc a couple times, but Leclerc still managed to get into third, and Verstappen managed to get fifth.
Yeah. That's right. And so just going back to the Bottas-Hamilton, though, what I really liked about that, we talked about, Bottas having a good quali, but in the race, obviously it didn't go his way with safety car, which no doubt we'll talk about at length. But what I liked is that battle, and Hamilton got past, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's it. Hamilton's passed. He's just going to keep flying.
Yeah.
And, in 10 laps' time, he'll be 10 seconds ahead, and, that'll be all she wrote. But that's not what happened. Bottas fights back and gets him back and ends up back in front of him. Great racing. Just put his elbows out, gets back in front of Hamilton, and now has the lead until he later on, he pits a bit earlier. Something else we should mention that kind of shaped the race a little bit that was weird in quali. The Ferraris both did a lap in Q2 on the medium tyres, and you were thinking they're going to qualify on the medium tyres in Q2 because we know that means that's the tyre they'll start on. And every other car in the top 10 that was fast enough used the medium tyres. So I think the Red Bulls and the Mercedes, those guys who are always at the front. And but they then went on to the softs, and both Vettel and Leclerc did faster laps on the softs. So started the race on the softs, which obviously kind of committed them to pitting earlier, which was an interesting strategy and caused some troubles for the Red Bulls later on because at the end of that first stint, the Ferraris were starting to slow down a bit.
But then the Red Bulls couldn't really get past.
The Red Bulls, well, that's why we saw a lot of battling between Leclerc and Vettel. So, great lap, great race.
Leclerc
battle.
Verstappen, you mean?
Well, Bottas, Hamilton, Leclerc Verstappen, sorry. We mentioned Grosjean and Magnussen crash. After that, then, lots of good battling going on. But then Antonio Giovinazzi manages to, from what I could tell, spin all by himself.
Well, also, just before the spin, he had lost, 2 positions. I mentioned it when we were watching that earlier, the replay. But I mentioned it. He lost 2 positions, one to Albon and then one to Stroll, I think, or one of the Racing Points.
Yeah. So do you think it maybe had an issue and that's why?
Maybe.
I didn't actually. I watched a replay and isn't there a funny kind of rear lock-up and he just... Yeah, I wonder if he did have an issue. Did he finish the race or did he retire?
He retired.
Yeah. So he got caught in the gravel, of course, after that spin. So that's probably why he retired. Safety car comes out. We should just mention before we talk about that safety car situation, which was pretty exciting, at the beginning as well. Norris had a good start. he got past Ricciardo because Ricciardo got boxed in by Gasly, who actually had a bad start.
Yeah.
And as Norris and Gasly are battling, there was actually a bit of contact. Norris
but
runs into Gasly a little bit.
Everyone behind Ricciardo seemed to get a good start because Albon also got quite a good start as well.
Yep.
And then Hulkenberg got a great start. Hulkenberg, who qualified 10th, and Albon, who qualified 9th. So Ricciardo dropped down behind Norris, right? But then Albon and Hulkenberg were like battling, and they were almost right next to Ricciardo.
Yeah.
So it kind of changed things.
Yeah, and was it, I think around lap 10 or so when Verstappen and Leclerc were battling, and I mentioned Ferrari were on the soft tyre. And then Vettel and Gasly were very close behind. So this battle between Leclerc and Verstappen really let Gasly and Vettel get into it. And actually, I think we saw Gasly get past Vettel at one point.
At one stage, but then Vettel got past.
Gasly had a pretty good weekend, would you say, Oscar? Like, he...
Better than usual. Like, he finished ahead of Verstappen, and he finished ahead of Vettel, but due to them crashing. But still...
Yeah, it was interesting. It was better than his normal weekend, I would say.
Yeah.
And then, but then we saw before the safety car, Vettel and Leclerc and Verstappen come into the pits. And is this the pit where Red Bull set the record? Because
they set
in
it
the
on
pits,
Gasly.
Oh, was it? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
they must have done a good one for Verstappen as well, because in the pits, they swap positions. So they both come in. Obviously, Leclerc's in front, but then Verstappen comes out in front of Leclerc due to a great pit stop. They're kind of side by side in the pit lane.
I think they broke the record once and then broke it again.
Really?
I think is what they said.
Yeah, 1.9 seconds was the time. So fastest ever pit stop in Formula One, as I understand it. So that's just another little interesting fact in the battles. But then obviously Bottas is pitted as well, and a bunch of people by this point have pitted, except for a couple of really key figures in the race, and
Hamilton?
in particular Lewis. Yeah,
Hamilton, Vettel as well, I think.
Yep, and Sainz.
And Verstappen, I think.
No, Verstappen and Norris, Verstappen and Leclerc both pitted that battle
then
in the pit
Gasly.
lane.
Then
And
one of the Red Bulls.
Okay, it's probably Gasly at this point then.
And then also Sainz.
Yeah, and Sainz, of course. So Sainz having a bit of an innocuous race, but hadn't pitted. Giovinazzi drops it into the gravel trap. May have been an issue, not quite sure. And then, of course, those opportunistic people decide they're going to come in for a pit. In fact, a lot of people pitted again, but some people got to pit for the first time, and it was just far enough into the race that you could go to the hard tyre and do a one-stopper, coming off the two-stopper. Now, interestingly, what I should say is when Bottas pitted, he started on the mediums and he pitted onto the mediums, effectively committing himself to a two-stopper at this point.
Because as some of you won't know, you have to change tyres at least once to a different tyre.
You've got to run both compounds, or at least two compounds.
So say you start on softs and you would have to go to the mediums or the hards, and same for the mediums. You have to go to the softs or the hards. You can't qualify on the hards. So technically,
you've got to change compound at least once. So Bottas was kind of committed. So everyone comes in. Well, not everyone. Hamilton comes onto the hards. Vettel comes onto the hard. Leclerc comes on. Leclerc comes in a lap late, and loses out a bit to Verstappen, to Vettel,
and
to a whole bunch of people.
You heard that on the radio. He was like, "Why did we lose a position on the radio?"
Yeah, I think he should have been before. I mean, he did lose to lots of people.
Yeah, but the problem is that Vettel was pitting at that stage, so Ferrari would have had to do a double stacker if they wanted to pit both of their cars.
Yeah, probably would have been a better option, though, given how many positions he lost in the pit.
It might have been, but it was kind of risky.
Now, some other notable people didn't come in. So obviously Sainz comes in, Hamilton comes in. So those that hadn't pitted come in and get a massive advantage. Other people like Ricciardo comes in, but Norris doesn't. And that was a really big strategic mistake.
I think Hulkenberg, Norris and Albon all didn't come in.
Yeah, and that really hurt them. Obviously, those three actually battle later in
and
the
then Raikkonen and Kvyat both did come in and hadn't come in yet, which is kind of... I think, well, they might have come in, but they might have had come in before, but they did come in and they were finished. They ended up behind Ricciardo and the people who had pitted.
So what happens after the safety car is basically it's race number 2. So we have this exciting opening stint where we've got Bottas and Hamilton, we've got Leclerc and Verstappen, kind of Vettel Gasly a little bit, some stuff going on the back as well with Norris and Ricciardo and some other people. But then the safety car, it kind of like is by this stage race number 2 starting. And then it all kind of kicks off again. First of all, on the safety car restart, Perez and Hulkenberg make contact. So Hulkenberg, Perez is kind of making a move, and Hulkenberg kind of turns into, I think it was cops, and basically drives over Perez's mistake. So Perez loses his front wing. Did he finish the race, Perez?
Yeah, he did. In last place.
Yeah, okay, because he had to pit after that, no doubt. And Hulkenberg seems to have no damage and carries on. But then we get treated to another Leclerc-Verstappen battle, which is just an absolute cracker. And what I will say is, if you remember in Austria, you will recall Vettel won that, and he beat Verstappen. I should say Vettel. Verstappen beats Leclerc in Austria, and kind of got his elbows out in some tough racing. And obviously Leclerc's learnt his lesson, and he's like, well, if that's how it's going to be, that's how it's going to be, and I'm going to fight really hard as well. And so they have some great off-track moments that are really tough battling, exciting stuff. But eventually, Verstappen is kind of in the ascendancy, and he gets past, and then Ruby has a comment.
I thought, like, after that, Verstappen was just going to, like, come before Leclerc. What did you think? Like, I thought Verstappen was just, after that, Verstappen passed. Like, Leclerc might try a few more times, but I thought Verstappen would still be in the lead.
Yeah, well, you're right, and he was, because he caught up with Vettel, who, of course, had the benefit of the safety car and was in third position. So at this point, you got Hamilton, Bottas, Vettel, and then Leclerc, Verstappen. But yeah, Verstappen does get past. Actually, gets them. Actually, Gasly is in front of them both too, because he benefited. So actually, Gasly is behind Vettel, and then Verstappen gets past Leclerc. I think Red Bull asked Gasly to get out of his way. He has a nice, easy overtake.
And then so it's kind of Gasly and Leclerc who are kind of left to battle at that stage.
Yeah, that's right. And Leclerc gets Gasly in the end, doesn't he?
Yes.
He beat Gasly. Well, actually, yes, he does, because he ends up on the podium. So,
so to you guys who are listening to this, if you've been watching F1 for even the smallest amount of time, not that long, you probably remember Azerbaijan 2018, right?
Baku, yep.
Oh, well, whatever.
It's Azerbaijan, people call it
clarification
Baku.
much. And then anyway, so you remember how Ricciardo and Verstappen were battling for ages. I think Verstappen was mostly ahead.
That's right.
And then it takes forever. But at one stage, Verstappen is ahead again, and then Ricciardo is behind him on the straight. He's so close, but then he loses downhill force, so he can't turn out of Verstappen, and then crashes right into him.
Yeah, Ricciardo rear
He can't stop fast enough because he's lost of downforce.
Yeah, and this is a bit similar. So you're now referring to...
It's very, very similar.
Verstappen and Vettel are battling. Verstappen gets past Vettel. And then Vettel...
Straight after that. Next corner, Vettel just crashes
Then
into the back.
Vettel gets a bit of a run on the next kind of little bit of straight. And then it looks like Verstappen's about to open up the inside line. Vettel kind of thinks there's a gap, thinks better of it, so tucks back in behind Verstappen. As soon as he does that...
He loses downforce.
Loses all downforce and locks up. And in fact, Oscar, when we were watching the replay, I had noted that after the safety car restart, I saw something very similar in that same corner where Vettel had a little lock-up behind someone but didn't clean them up because he was a bit wider. But yeah, so Vettel then plows into the back of Verstappen. How both of these cars survive is a mystery to me. Now, Vettel has to pit, so he falls to the back and then
His
later gets a penalty.
But then...
Well, Dad mentioned we're rewatching. If you watched, like, the kind of replay they did in the race, Verstappen got lots of bounce. Like, did you see that? Like, his car almost, like, kind of jumped.
Yeah, it
over the
bounces
curb.
into the air. And I was thinking suspension's gone, punctures.
His car was fine. No punctures, no suspension.
Yeah, he obviously would have had floor damage, but
a
not
bit
so
of
much
floor damage
that
at the back.
Yeah,
And
he didn't have miles of pace after that, right? He kind of I mean, he was a bit behind. Obviously, he'd fallen behind.
He
Leclerc
finished
and
at the
Gasly.
bottom of the top, except for Vettel. So Vettel has to limps back to
Does
the
Gasly beat
pit lane.
Verstappen?
Gasly. Yes, he does.
He does. Yeah, and as a result of this, so Gasly beats Verstappen, probably not
But
quite
then
on merit.
Vettel does not come out well because he has to pit and then has no pace for the rest.
But
of
you're
the
spot on, Ruby. Seeing those cars bounce around and then survive was phenomenal to me. I actually got a bit excited because I thought here's some easy positions for Ricciardo.
And also just want to tell you, we only have 2 microphones, so having 3 guests, we can only talk twice at once, which is kind of why we're stopping a little bit.
So basically, Vettel's race is ruined. Verstappen's race is certainly puts him back a bit, and he was probably on for a podium. He probably would have
still
caught
finishes
Leclerc.
5th, though.
Yeah, but he was probably on for a good podium. Behind all of this, Sainz, we mentioned, has benefited from the safety car, so he's kind of sitting in best of the rest. But Ricciardo, who came out around 11th or so after all the pit stops, showing good pace and catches up to Sainz.
And
for
battles.
basically the last 15 laps or so, sits behind him, attacks him a few times, never quite has pace. You got to say, Sainz, I've mentioned this a few times, he's been lucky with safety cars and strategy a few times, but you got to say, defended brilliantly to hold off Ricciardo. But Ricciardo showing, really good pace in that Renault. Hulkenberg kind of got unlucky. He had that Perez incident. He got a bit stuffed over in the strategy during the pit stop, during the safety car period. And also then his car went into limp home mode. So towards the end there, he lost a few positions, probably about maybe with 10 laps to go. And it looked like he had an issue, but apparently down one of the straights, his car went into what they call limp home mode. This is where the engine's trying to protect itself, so it turns off all the power. Only did that for a couple of seconds, but of course that enabled everyone to, well, not everyone, but a few cars to overtake him.
Yeah.
But then he did a pretty good job towards the end to overtake a few people, and he got Albon on the last lap to get a point come 10th and get a final point. But
So good race for Renault as well.
But I've seen some commentary afterwards, the benefit of recording this a week late, that Hulkenberg was pretty dirty at Renault for his strategy. And Renault said something like, we kind of took our eye off the ball and focused on Ricciardo. And now, that's a funny thing to say because usually you have your own race strategists. I don't think the team has a race strategist for both. I think they have their own, but I could be wrong there. Maybe that's not true. And so, that's disappointing. So anyway, Hamilton, Bottas then had to pit again. Hamilton, on very old tyres, gets asked to pit towards the end and says, nah, don't think so. Not going to pit. He had the gap on Bottas, so he could have, but decides not to. You're thinking his tyres are pretty worn, but he only does the fastest lap on the last lap. On super old tyres. So
he wasn't complaining about his tyres this time, I don't think.
He had kind of said, they're a bit worn, but he always does complain about his tyres.
I think once, you're feeling the tires, I think maybe he thought, these tires seem pretty good because, when you're in the car, you kind of, feel the tires, I guess.
And you have hands-on experience with this?
Yeah, you're right. You can feel how much grip you've got, Ruby. You're spot on. And obviously he thought they were right because, he then does the fastest lap. So clearly he did have a lot of grip or just raw pace left in that car.
Yeah.
So anyway, pretty exciting. We mentioned the Williams had their best race. Russell comes 14th. Kubica, after Vettel's penalty, came 15th. And I think Leclerc got driver of the day, if I recall.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, you got to wonder when Leclerc's going to get his first victory.
He deserves one.
Yeah, I would say that I have thought he's been a little bit timid in his driving, but certainly not after this race. He really showed his mettle, as did a lot of drivers today. It was just today. It was over a week ago, but it feels like it was today because we just rewatched a bit of a replay. But yeah, really exciting stuff. Wheel-to-wheel racing. This whole F1 cars can't follow each other stuff. Some pretty high-speed corners in Silverstone, and they seem to be able to hang on pretty close to each other, which I thought was interesting. Pure baloney. I don't think it is. Certain tracks, I don't know what character. Clearly at a place like Spain, they just can't do it. But then at Silverstone, which seems to have some high-speed corners,
that's because
they really
Spain has some really low downforce corners.
All right, so that was kind of the race.
Should we do a quick round of Happy Sad?
Yeah, we should do a quick round of Happy Sad. Ruby, this is where we just go through, normally from last to first, and just kind of reflect on how the driver would be feeling about kind of their weekend and maybe even their season a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, we just say, would they be happy or would they be sad after Silverstone?
So let's start with Magnussen. Do you have any comments?
Kevin
Ruby?
Magnussen is super duper sad.
Sad. Crying.
Definitely crying
yeah.
after a horror and after getting beaten up by Gunther Steiner after the race as well, no doubt.
The next Haas, Grosjean, he's even less happy. I mean, he's doing better this season than last season.
Yeah, but
He hasn't crashed under a safety car yet.
He's not crying, but he's sad.
No, he's more sad than Magnussen, probably. Like, if we reflected the whole season, he's just kind of being overshadowed by Magnussen a little bit.
Yeah, he is a little bit, but the Haas are having a shocking season all round. So
Yeah.
Haas and both Haas drivers
But
are
they have
very
a cool
sad at the
car
moment, I
now
think.
this year.
Who's next?
They have a cool car.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Uh,
Except aren't Rich Energy getting sued for their logo use by that bicycle company? So I think they've had to remove their logos. Were they on the car this weekend, actually?
I don't think
that
they
kind
were.
of funny stag-looking horn logo?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think they had to remove it. So anyway, next.
Giovinazzi.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think he'd be sad, too.
Happy for creating such an exciting race, and Lewis Hamilton's now his best friend.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
he
think
was sad.
Hamilton knew it.
And it's a shame because Giovinazzi, a bit of a slow start to the season, but he's now kind of matching Raikkonen. He's qualifying as well as
Well,
him.
Raikkonen's getting old.
Raikkonen, hey?
Raikkonen's getting old, though.
Yeah, but Raikkonen's having a good season too, and Giovinazzi's showing his medals. So, disappointed that he dropped it, but had a pretty good race.
We have Perez. No, he's sad.
Yeah.
He finished last if you took him out of the sort of the people who were still in the race. He finished last place, and Hulkenberg ran over his front wing.
Yeah, you're right. He wouldn't be very happy because he had a shocker of a race.
And because Racing Point have no point.
Who's next? I appreciate that humor, but sorry.
Thank you.
Ha, ha, ha.
Vettel. Yeah, this is one self-explanatory.
Yeah, Vettel. I saw some article by some pundit basically saying that Vettel needs to leave Ferrari to get his mojo back. I don't think he's at a point where he's going to leave, but who knows?
I think he'd just be pretty disappointed, to be honest.
Well, it's his fault. The crash was his fault. Got a time penalty.
He'd be disappointed in himself.
Yeah, he will be disappointed in himself, and yet another kind of mistake, which we've seen any time there's wheel-to-wheel action. Sebastian Vettel seems not to be able to just battle and do it cleanly. And through this race, we saw Bottas and Hamilton do it. We saw Leclerc and Verstappen do it. Some really tough racing. We saw plenty of other people do it. Sainz and Ricciardo, Norris and Ricciardo, and not come to a crash situation. But Vettel, every time, Canada, every time, we've seen it. So, yeah, certainly not his best.
We have Kubica, who's happy-ish.
Kubica can't be happy when he gets out-qualified by half a second by his teammate every single weekend.
He had a good finish, though. He finished in front of Vettel. He finished in front of a Ferrari, Dad.
You could say he was meh.
So, Williams showing great race pace. They're probably up to win a race.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
Okay, Russell's happy because, 14th, good result. He keeps just showing how good he is.
Well, is that how good he is or just how bad his teammate is?
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. It's probably how bad Kubica is, but I think he's doing a good job. Stroll, definitely disappointed. 13th is just kind of pure luck because everyone else had a bad race. He basically only beat the Williams.
Racing Point not doing too well,
although he did beat Perez, didn't he? Albon, he had a good quali, didn't he, Albon? But then it didn't come together in a race because was it pit strategy?
I think it was.
Did he have a mechanical issue at some point? I seem to think he did. But anyway, Norris would be disappointed.
Yeah, I think he'd be disappointed.
Yeah, I think if...
Again, pit strategy didn't work out.
He was in the situation and what happened to Ricciardo in Baku. I mean, not Baku.
Norris obviously had a great quali, so he'd be happy for that. He qualified in front of Ricciardo, didn't he? He was P6.
No, he was P8.
In quali?
Yeah.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Oh, Ricciardo out qualified?
Yeah.
Okay. But he had a good quali, nonetheless.
But he did that strategy where he pitted before the safety car.
That's right.
And then had to pit
strategy
again.
stuffed him over. Lando must just be frustrated that Sainz always seems to get the run of the luck. But anyway.
Apparently, Albon and Norris they were under investigation for pit
unsafe release or something. Yeah.
I don't know. They didn't end up giving a penalty, I don't
Probably
think.
not. Hulkenberg?
Yeah, I think he's okay, I guess. I mean...
No, he's dirty. He was dirty at Renault for the strategy. He said they stuffed up lots of things. It sounds like Renault are favouring Ricciardo. It wouldn't surprise me if we see Hulkenberg move teams next year.
It'd be interesting to see who would partner with Ricciardo, though.
I mean, the spot wasn't... Okay, it wasn't too good, but it wasn't too bad.
He was pretty fast right at the end of the race, and he managed to get a point. But yeah, I think he'd come away a bit disappointed.
What do you reckon?
Denny Kvyat came ninth. How did he magic that? Was he a beneficiary of the safety car period?
Yes, he was.
He would be happy.
He would be happy. Bad qualifying, but good race result.
Raikkonen happy. Another beneficiary of the safety car.
Raikkonen, another quiet 8th place. I think he's come 8th like a bunch of times this season. Just kind of quietly doing his thing. You don't see a lot of him. He's not. Maybe he was battling on track, but I didn't see it. There were so many other battles this race.
Yeah.
Possible he didn't. Ricciardo?
Yeah, Ricciardo would be really happy.
Yeah,
Pretty
I think
happy.
Ricciardo was happy. Good recovery drive.
A little bit disappointing he couldn't get past Sainz, though.
Could have had that 6th place if not for the safety car period, but did well to come back at Sainz. And I was actually, you know what, I was glad because I thought Ricciardo might pull a Vettel and get a little bit too eager and run into the back of Sainz. So, I was glad to see maybe Ricciardo just demonstrate a little bit more restraint and not be too desperate. So good result.
Is sad because Vettel crashed. We forgot about Sainz.
Sainz is happy.
Sainz is
delighted.
chuffed.
Yes, he really is.
Verstappen, pretty frustrated, I would say. Probably felt he was on for a podium.
And got crashed into.
Gasly, definitely a happy chappy to beat Verstappen. Kind of raced pretty well. Had some good battles against Vettel.
It's his best finish, I think.
Yeah, he did pretty well. I think he'll come away pretty satisfied. Leclerc, 3rd place.
I think it'd be meh. I mean, he would be happy that he got podium, but I think he would have been disappointed that he didn't get a better.
I don't think he could have got a better finish.
Yeah,
though.
I don't think they had the absolute pace on the Mercedes today. But what did he finish 30 seconds behind? But that was pit stop
Leclerc's
strategy.
still looking for that
6
victory.
seconds behind Bottas. Yeah, looking for that elusive victory.
Yeah,
yeah. You hope he'll get it this season, but we'll see. Certainly, the Ferraris, at least in the hands of Leclerc, look to have the kind of pace on Mercedes. It was pretty close all weekend.
Bottas will be annoyed.
Yeah, he'll be annoyed that he didn't get in front of Hamilton.
The pit strategy
or get fastest lap, right?
him.
Because he pitted towards the end and had fresher tyres, and Hamilton stole that away from him.
Yeah.
So insult to injury there, he will be frustrated. However, will he take some happiness away from the fact that he battled Hamilton and was able to kind of hold his own and get back at Hamilton?
I think he'd be pretty happy because of that. I mean, not happy, but being pretty good.
Yeah, he certainly wasn't outraced by Hamilton, I don't feel. It was really
definitely.
just a bit of luck. So
And then-
can hold his head high, I would say. Yeah.
Hamilton's happy.
And Hamilton's delighted. I think I saw some article saying he's having his best season ever or the best first 10 races of the season.
That was a pretty recent article, I think.
Yeah, that was a recent article, so I'm cheating here. It was after the weekend. But he's racing really well, Lewis. You can't argue with that. Well, guys, I think that's your lot from Silverstone. What a fantastic race. Ruby, glad to have you on the show. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I enjoyed.
Good. That was not very enthusiastic,
Hold
but
on.
I'll take it.
Wait. We have predictions to make, I think. Quickly.
Germany next race in about 4 or 5 days' time. What are we thinking?
You know what? I am not good at making predictions, so I think Hamilton's going to have a good race, and that's pretty much
I
about
predict
us.
that Ruby won't be watching that race, so I doubt she'll be on the next episode. Sorry.
Who knows? Yeah, I don't know about Germany. I can't remember who won it last year. So I would say let's hope Leclerc gets his maiden victory, huh?
Well,
he's got this turn of
it
speed
didn't
now.
turn out too well for the Ferraris last year because I do remember
that
Vettel
was when
crashing.
that's when Vettel. It was a wet race, wasn't it? Vettel crashed from the lead. Yeah, that was right.
I think Hamilton won, actually.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's when the season all went off the rails for Ferrari. Well, let's hope it's where the season goes off the rails for Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari can come back a little bit.
And also a little bit of insight just on some things. News in that sort of regard. I think Grosjean will probably Grosjean or Magnussen might end up partnering Ricciardo and Renault next year, perhaps, I think.
There is no way Renault's going to take Grosjean. I mean, they'd like to have a French run.
maybe?
I don't think so.
Well,
Let's
someone.
hope Germany is just as interesting as this race.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's it. that's your lot from us. We look forward to seeing you next time. We'll certainly endeavour next week to record straight after the race. Thanks for bearing with us on this one.
Make sure to email us if you have any comments.
Formula One and Son at gmail.com.
And we now have a YouTube channel which we're putting all our podcast episodes on. And I thought I'd put some news reports that we're not putting on the actual podcast on there too. Sometimes.
And, of course, please rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks for listening. This has been Formula One and
Son.
With a special